What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Kickin with Kachi, powered by DC Voice. I'm your host, Costa Analyst. Today, we have another amazing guest. We have an amazing artist, Joyce the Maker. How are you doing today? Thank you for coming in and kicking with me.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. And for those tuning in, if you guys do not know the work of Joyce, understand that they do a multitude of things. It's hard to really put the name to it. You could definitely let me know as well, because I would love to say that you do pottery, but that doesn't really also encapsulate some other stuff that you're doing with jewelry and some also functional items. So I could say sculptor, but like I said, the functional item piece to it too. So what would you kind of classify your artistry, or I guess what you do?
I call them like sculptural objects that sometimes are functional. It is hard to kind of categorize it because I'm working with cement and making things that you normally see in ceramic out of cement. So people are like kind of confused about, what do you call it? Pottery? Is it um, ceramic? Is it, I have vessels? So yeah, I just like to call them sculptural objects.
And for those that didn't catch it, right, like you work mainly with cement. And I don't think many people know many artists that work primarily or exclusively in some cases for you with cement. How did that kind of get into play? Because I don't know if that's just readily available in art school for people just to play with, or how did you kind of get to playing into that and then turning it into something like
Mhm.
pottery and other objects?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it all started kind of getting introduced to it through an industrial setting. I started making a pathway using like my own brick maker, and I was making this like colorful bricks, and I realized like I didn't know you could add color to cement, and then I didn't know you could kind of shape it in this way that's different than pottery and ceramic. And so I just started really thinking about like, how could I figure out how to make this accessible material do something that it's not supposed to do. Like, it's not supposed to make a sculptural object.
Right.
So I just started thinking about ways I could just treat it like something it's not supposed to be. And so I started making vases, and that just sort of led to planters and ashtrays and, you know, all sorts of things.
And then in terms of the process of, you said, different ways of treating it and different ways of interacting, engaging with the medium, how does that kind of come into play when you're doing a variety of things, right? Because the weight and the feel of, let's say, a bowl or an ashtray is different than, if you guys didn't know, they also make corks and earrings.
Yeah, yeah.
How does that kind of play into, now you have to do these smaller,
Mhm.
intricate pieces as opposed to, let's say, like, like I said, a vase or a bowl.
Yeah, the smaller intricate pieces are really tricky because it's a lot more fragile than you think it is on that smaller scale. So for the jewelry, I've been casting my own beads, and I started thinking about the bead shape because there's so few thin spots, because that's really where you've got to be paying attention to when you're casting with cement, is anywhere that there's a thin spot, that's like where it could potentially break. And so the round bead shape really worked well for it. So I started making these beads, and it's pretty fascinating how like weighted they feel. Like um, I'm working on doing some necklace designs with them, and they're heavier than a
Right,
regular necklace, but it feels really like comforting, like a weighted
right,
blanket
right.
on your chest. And so I'm really excited to start putting those out because I think they're going to be really fun.
And I love I don't know if this was intentional or maybe just a byproduct of the artistry as well, but the idea of a woman artist and then working with something as like durable and hard as cement, right? But then
Yeah.
making these pieces that have curvatures and color and texture and depth. is that sort of an ethos that you kind of want to speak to your art as well, to kind of allow this sort of warmth feeling, this sort of comforting feeling, but with something that we kind of take as very cold and, um, impersonal?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's got a lot to do with limiting beliefs. And I think that in a way I can like relate to the idea of cement, even though it's like not a feminine material, but I relate to it in terms of like it having all of these limiting beliefs around it. And as a woman, especially like I've worked in very male dominated industries. I also am like a welder, so I've been welding for like 20 years and I teach welding. And so I'm in a lot of these male dominated fields. And I kind of relate to the idea of transforming cement from this thing with one idea about it to this new thing because it's pushing those limiting beliefs. It's pushing the boundaries that people have set in their mind on things. And I think it's especially important to be doing that as a woman in the field.
And then going, I also know that you have a master's in fine arts as well. So when going back, and one, going through the turmoil and tribulations of undergrad, but then deciding that, you know what, I'm gonna do it again for another year and a half, another 2 years. How was that experience like, and kind of how did that sort of transform your artistry and kind of being in that community, having that technical assistance, and also kind of having it be part of your day to day is for both academia and probably something for your soul as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, undergrad and grad school were a lot different because I took almost a 15-year break. So I was going back to grad school much later in life after I had had, a 10-year career in a separate industry. Um, and I had really stepped away from my art because I just kind of got sucked into corporate culture and I really let art take a back seat. And around 2019, I hadn't had an art show in a few years, and I just started really thinking about how I needed to make a shift. And so, in the beginning of 2020, like right before the pandemic, I decided to quit the industry and go back to grad school because I really just wanted to re-immerse my brain fully into a creative environment and specifically one with a community that was going to talk about art on a higher level than undergrad. Whereas in undergrad, you learn a lot of art history, you're learning a lot about how to make things and what resources are available. But I didn't really get into the conceptual nature of it as much as I did in grad school, which was really what I was looking for. I really just needed to get my mind completely transitioned into a creative landscape. And so that's why grad school, it sounds crazy to do it, but I really just needed it and I'm really grateful for the community I had.
And I know a lot of people that are hopefully contemplating going to art school, especially post grad, can heed this
Mhm.
advice and kind of see that there is a positive outcome to it as well. Um, and then in terms of like now pushing out into the art world and artistry, even though you kind of have these accolades and these experiences, still very new and still very different than probably what you would see other people and other classmates be doing. So how did kind
Yeah.
of, I guess, the technical aspect, but then also your gut feeling and that creative passion, did they kind of clash in certain places, or did they kind of meld in other ways to kind of create this new niche that you created for yourself?
I think that there's clashing and melding happening at the same time. I'm really fortunate that I have the background working full time and I can apply that in a lot of ways to working in the studio and recognizing that there's a lot more to being a creative than just what you produce. You have to really learn how to manage your time and, you know, create a hierarchy of
Oh, we
you
almost
need to
lost.
put effort into in order. So fresh out of grad school, I jumped into the craft market world and I just started grinding and um it was really fun. I met a lot of really amazing people, but I realized that, like, I'm not sure that that's really where I see myself in the long run.
Right.
So I had to realize that so much of learning about what kind of a creative life you want to have is knowing what kind of creative life's not going to work for you. And I think that creating the same thing over and over again for like a craft market is just really not the creative um, pathway I see myself on. So
Right.
I
Right.
have been working on doing a bit of a transition to be able to work more project based. So I'm not stuck in just sort of working in this one way of thinking where I can go from project to project and really let my mind be free rather than trying to just make one thing for money,
Right,
which is
right,
hard.
and yeah, I mean that there is that caveat of being a creative and wanting to create, but then also needing capital to create, but then creating
Mhm.
for capital, right? Like that catch 22 that we always catch ourselves in. So, but glad to see that. I mean, in pursuing that, you're doing something that you love, and
Yeah.
then in getting into this, right? Like, what sort of oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I was gonna ask, in making these pieces, do you have a favorite piece? Do you have something that you kind of hold dear to your heart? And where it's like, when did you kind of, when you were making these pieces, right? When was the moment where like, oh wow, I have created something that is here to stay for a little bit. This is something that is valid.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. What I've been making a lot of is like the cement objects with those smooth curves. I actually started making those when I tried out throwing some cement in a balloon,
Mm.
and I started it on a very small scale. But as soon as I did a big one, I knew that this was something, that there was an idea here, and it allowed me like a freedom while casting, which is kind of hard because casting, it's like, usually you have a mold, so it's the same thing every time you put cement
Right,
in it, you're
right.
getting the same thing. So I've been filling balloons with cement, and then I have kind of a proprietary mold system that is just sort of like the top and the bottom, and then it smushes the balloon.
Or like an Oreo.
Um, Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then the balloon is like that filling. And so I can create shapes that are limitless because it's not a closed mold,
Right,
but I'm
right.
still getting the clean finish of mold making that I love. And so yeah, as soon as I did one that was like a pretty good size, I was like, this is nice. I like it.
And that's great. And like I said, the reason why I asked is because we always, as creators, we always have, we know that we have something, but there usually is like that lightning or
Mhm.
that epiphany where it's like,
Yeah,
okay, hold on,
yeah.
I really did something here. Hold on, this is great. So I'm glad that I'm always curious as to know when that moment is for other people and
Mhm.
how they are along their journey. So what do we have looking forward to now from you and kind of your artistry, and what should we be looking forward to?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a couple of exhibition proposals. So I have kind of some ideas floating around with a photographer that I know of doing sort of it's hard to explain. It's somewhat of a performative piece that involves the balloon casting, but with strangers becoming involved.
Okay.
And so hopefully that's going to be at a gallery soon. And then also a couple of girlfriends and I are working on a podcast together. We just recorded our first episode called Makers on Making.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's makers talking about making while we're making. So you can watch us craft and make something while we're talking about it, which gives it a little bit of a looser flow.
And that's great. And honestly, it will be on Spotify and the Apple Podcasts and hopefully all those great, amazing platforms for us to check out.
Yeah, yeah, we're working on it. We're getting there.
Okay. Okay.
It's still
Okay.
very new.
And then what would you kind of say, before we wrap up and we're out of here, what would you say has been a highlight? right? And before I get into my last question, it's been a great sort of moment that kind of you carry with you. I know, especially like I said, as creators, we have those moments where there's no clients, there's no creative juices, there's nothing kind of going, but we do have those feelings that let us know like we're in the right place.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate that on Saturdays I get to teach welding classes to people wanting to make furniture and sculpture.
Hmm.
So it's community ed, so it's people that you normally don't have a lot of experience. And the moments of my week that are the best are when they tell me that I made them feel comfortable in the studio and I made them excited about making. And I just think that that is really something that powers me. And that's why I think the podcast is so exciting because I'm just like so amped about people making and I just want to be there to help them.
And that's and honestly, I think that that is my parents always told me that that's the greatest joy you could have when you're doing something that you know other people need you to do. They need to see you do it. They need to feel validated in them doing it because they learn from you. So I'm glad that you have that a weekly highlight for yourself, and
Yeah. Yeah.
then hopefully more people will go and check you out, and there's more makers in your area. But Joyce, thank you so much for coming in and kicking with me for a little bit and talking about your artistry. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I love listening to your episodes. They're always just so positive and it's yeah, amazing. Amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't usually people don't watch them all the time, but thank you for that was a good note. And like I said, you guys can check out my homegirl Joyce at Joyce the Maker on Instagram. Do you want to drop your email? I don't usually give all that contact information because I don't know who's on the internet, but do you have any other contacts or any sort of information that you want us to be privy of?
Yeah, just check out joycethemaker.com. You can get in touch with me there. I am available for teaching and consulting. Everything's available on the website, joycethemaker.com.
Thank you so much. And you guys can check out this interview with Joyce at the DC Voice on Instagram and YouTube. Once again, I'm your host, Kachi Analyst, Joyce the Maker. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us once again. And I hope you have an amazing night.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're out of here.